Welcome to your Question Pro. What's the name of this one? I was just doing one yesterday. I got to remember the name of this one. Bad data quality is killing your research, so let's fix it webinar. If you don't know me, I'm Crystal Weiss. I'm the Director of Marketing here at Question Pro, and I am joined today by not only one of my sidekicks, Tim Cornelius, who helps with our audience and sampling and amazing stuff, but we've brought in an awesome guest, Bob Fossen, and I'd love for you to introduce yourself to our guest. Oh, and look at all these people who are logged in. I love this. Let's go. Okay. Bob, who are you and why do you matter?
Well, I'll answer the first question and then you can decide what the answer for the second question is. But I'm a longtime sample industry veteran, started a panel business, spent many years at SSI and Research Now. And I'm currently CEO and co-founder of the Data Quality Co-op.
That's so fun. Where are you based out of?
I'm based in Salt Lake.
That's awesome. I'm in Austin, Texas. Tim, you are in Louisiana. There it is. Let us know where you're at in the chat. And if you guys have any questions, please drop them into the chat. We're going to be answering them in live time as we go through kind of our conversation. This is going to be really casual today. We don't have any slides. If you've been to a few Question Pro shenanigans over the years, you probably know we're not like a slide company. We're much more of like an authentic, give me that TikTok clip, Bob, and I'll be really happy with this whole hour that we're going to be in here talking about data. Anna's from Mexico, Kathy from Chicago. Why more people are telling us where they are. Tim, tell us a little bit about how long you've been at Question Pro and your audience sample journey.
Yeah, so I've been at Question Pro since 2020. Before that, I was at Lucid, the sample marketplace, which is now Scent. So I've been in the space for about 8 years.
Wow, that's so fun. You're only 2 years. I came to Question Pro almost 6 years ago, so you only got 2. I thought you had more years on me than that. Ooh, Dubai, Los Angeles, Connecticut. Let's go. We love a global webinar. I'm not going to lie to you guys. Question Pro, if you don't know that much about us, we're a global company as well with over 400 employees worldwide. So we love seeing our global contingents joining us. So guys, to give you a little bit about what we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about low quality and misleading data. I'm sure the guys, I'm a bit spicy. I think sometimes market researchers don't care, but the guys are here to prove me wrong. We're going to talk about designing your research for clarity, for supporting your data quality. We're going to talk about tools and timings and kind of the nitty gritty. And then I've got kind of a question at the end about called I want them to share their biggest data disaster story. So stay tuned to the end for our data disaster story that the guys are going to tell us about. And let's just dive in. What right now do you think this is kind of like a theological question, I guess. Like, what do you think is the biggest issues facing data quality right now, especially with the emergence of AI? I'm sure people might be tired of us talking about it, but if you don't talk about it, people don't know about it. And so what do you think are some of the biggest variables in the world right now when it comes to data quality?
I didn't know we were starting with theology, Crystal. That's great.
So I was just like, it's just this kind of like overarching, looming, like, Bob, what do you think?
You want me to kick us off? I have a strong opinion about this. So let's get started, I guess. I mean, I think AI is doing 3 things, and they're all equally important in the space. I mean, I think about, how I've used data in my career, generally collecting data to answer a question. There's some specific methodology, some specific question, and AI is making it so now we're more often collecting data to build models. We might be building synthetic audiences. We might be training models to learn. And so the data we're collecting gets used for much more than one use case. And I think that means our responsibility to make sure it's accurate is growing. So that's number one. I think if you're going to use a piece of data 20 times instead of one, and you don't know every use case beforehand, it's just got to be better data. And the second part is AI is making it harder to ensure that the data we collect comes from real and engaged people. So there's a bit of an arms race, and I think it's a signal data arms race. As sampling has become more distributed, there's more and more places for bad actors to learn about our ecosystem and how to get into it. And we've got to figure that out. So I'll pause there, but I'll let you go, Tim.
I was taking some, you'll notice I take notes while we're going, because it helps me host these things with little preparation. And so when you talk about the responsibility of good data being used in more than one segment, Tim, how do you see people taking, when, I guess, if we field a survey for them, then that survey gets used for more than one use case, and people are parsing data for their different pieces, and then they don't know where it came from? Is that what Bob's kind of referring to?
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to ask Bob, but I think that.
No,
but reading Bob's mind here, people are using research. It is a less and less more expensive thing. But before, people were spending tons of money to put together research and basically running a small survey and treating it like an omnibus, and every piece of the business and each unit is taking pieces from it and extrapolating what they want from it. This is what I'm seeing. But yeah, it's becoming an issue with sample source validation and where they are getting their participants from, and how well they know their participants and where they came from. And I know Bob's done a ton of research on that, sample source auditing and things like that.
Bob, do you have, I'm just thinking about me. When I fielded 3 surveys today using Tim's team, because I love surveys. I think they're so fun. Mostly love them for marketing. But I never asked Tim where the data comes from. I'm just like, cool, Tim's got it. What do you think a whimsical market researcher like myself should be asking? I'm not going to say I'm a real market researcher. No one on these webinars will know I never claim that. What should they be asking their providers and the people like you about where those signals are coming for? Do you have a checklist?
First, I'd say research needs more whimsy. So good job at being whimsical. So maybe a step back. We just we sent out a white paper today, but we just finished some research on research. It was really interesting. And we went out to 2 sample providers, good, well-known, trusted providers, and we bought 2,000 completes. And those providers gave us a list of all of their sub-suppliers. They were super transparent, great to work with. And then we also asked in the survey of the participants, and this is something I think everybody should experiment with, is which website or app did you start our survey from today? And we coded those open ends. About 30% were gibberish, but the rest were pretty good. And then we visited all the sources of sample. And there were 112 sources of sample in our one project with 2 sample providers that we could identify, visit, and validate that they were real sources. So that could be an individual mobile game that I could visit and find their offer wall. That could be a panel. In fact, most of the sample, again, one survey, but most of the sample came from kind of panels and reward sites.
Okay.
And I think, why is that relevant? I mean, it's interesting, but why is it relevant to your question? So it's relevant because I think about the sampling ecosystem. A lot of us hold this belief that it's like one-on-one, there's a relationship with the individual, they're being sampled, but it's not true. So for my survey, let's see, there are 28 sub-suppliers, 2 providers, 142 open doors for bad actors to come into my survey. Correct me in the comments if my addition's wrong, but it's not all bad though. Like that's made sample really available, and it's fueled the growth of a lot of our industry. But when I think about what that means for data quality and fraud, it's like, did you see the movie, oh shoot, Catch Me If You Can? Like I think about check kiting. You used to be able to write a check from one account, cash it in the other one, remove the money. And like if we don't have access to that huge footprint of data quality and fraud signals that's created at the bottom of that triangle, then the bad actors can move faster than us. So I think there's two things in the industry as it pertains to quality. It's like, one, we have to stay a step ahead at keeping quality signals moving across silos. I think of like score, it's simple, it helps banks. And then we also have to invest in the tools to evaluate the quality of the data in survey. And both of those things have to happen. I think they're both necessary to kind of elevate quality across the ecosystem.
I love that. It also makes me just, I'm a naturally curious person. That's how I ended up at Question Pro. And, I think it also makes me think, like, how could we be educating even our users, right? I think about our market research teams that use Question Pro about, this is going to make Tim's job harder.
Sorry, Tim.
Making sure they're asking Tim about where those signals are coming from, because I would say a lot of time it's like, okay, you guys got it, let's go. But the more we could educate them on those entry points, the better they could program their surveys even.
Yeah. It's interesting. And I like that. I want to pull that thread too. But I think that a lot of the industry associations are kind of ringing this bell. Like the Market Research Society has done some great work on like how to sample from one source make its way through the ecosystem to a project through multiple intermediaries. And the Insights Association benchmarking is super interesting. I was reading their Wave 0 results. I mean, if you take into account what sample providers are removing pre-survey, what research agencies are removing in survey and post-survey, it's almost 75% of respondents are removed before data is delivered. And that to me just like screams out that we need to think a little differently about managing quality versus just trying to detect it in every survey.
Tim, what do you think about that? How do we manage quality versus being able to detect it? Like, not because you're on both sides, right? We're a provider, we're also a builder. Like, how does that come into how you build our structure or here at Question Pro?
Yeah, I think it's just complete transparency and piping in everything you can from the supplier, like the entry link URL and URL tagging the source that they came from. I think it is good for the professional researchers to keep their own internal scorecard and decide which providers are really doing well, which ones could be improved, and what they designate is good. Being in the middle of buyers and suppliers, if you're on the supply side, you get paid for each completed survey. When you're on the buy side, you pay for each one that you accept. So when you're in the middle, do you put quality standards all the way to super hard mode so no one can get through, real people are turned away? Or do you make it super open? And do you have the buyer do some of the work themselves to decide what's real and what's not real? So it's a hard spot to sit in the middle of, but working with our clients at Question Pro, we can decide, what exactly they're looking for and what is an acceptable level, what they absolutely should be kicking out of their survey, and what we should flag for them to say, hey, please take a better look. And for the people that may be doing work like you do, Crystal, you can just tell us like, hey, give us the best quality that you can. And give us the quickest turnaround, and you do the work. You're seeing completes every day, and let us know what's good. There's always a give and take there. But yeah, I really think that you have to stay on top of what you know, and you have to be open for what you don't know. And then you have to be ready to rip down the whole system and rebuild it up again.
That sounds like the opposite of what market researchers like to do. Just saying. Okay, so Tim, you mentioned something interesting about an internal scorecard of suppliers. Do people actually do that? Because that's the first time I've heard of it. And
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
okay, great. Love that for
Yeah.
them. They definitely don't talk about it.
Yeah, we have lots of customers that say these are the sources we're willing to have in our survey. They also tell us, you know, you have to have 30% from this source, things like that.
Mhm.
Um, and we rely on their judgment, but we also bring them the receipts on the back end of like, hey, maybe
Any good
reevaluate
millennial.
this because we have our own scorecard, and this is what we're seeing at a higher volume.
I love that. I mean, like any good millennial, we always bring receipts. Like, don't you come at me. I got the data to prove it. Something though, I have been learning as when we were doing all our Taylor Swift research, which is how Tim and I became friends, frankly. And now that I have a market researcher doing like consumer studies for the marketing team, kind of building surveys as content. What we've also noticed is we're doing a survey right now on like what is considered luxury, right? There's there's like a lipstick index, right, around recession and how much people are willing to spend on lipsticks depending on how they're feeling about the economy. But she was like, hey, sometimes we get too many like retirees. Like, how do we want to like, they're not going to be buying like YSL lipstick at Sephora. And so instead of going to Tim and be like, hi, Tim, can you please do all these things? We just stuck it in the survey so that we could quota it out that way. Is there a way, what's the good mix of that? Controlling the survey coming in, like controlling the data in, or controlling it through the survey? Is there a good, bad, right, wrong, better?
Yeah, I mean, you have to do both. You have to
Mhm.
do both. And I think, yeah. So maybe I'll say this. I've got two comments on this. So one,
Great. I saw you taking notes.
yeah, one thing that I'll say is I think when we pay attention to methodology, like research is good. So for all the concern about digital fraud and data quality, and it's real, and we have to address it with urgency, we still deliver great work across the ecosystem every single day.
Right.
And you know, in not to like keep revisiting it, but in the ROR we just did, we used some choice tests, some max dip methodology, and we kept all of the respondents that were bad, whether they were fraudulent or just providing bad data, and compared that against removing them. And you know, a good choice test methodology produced pretty good results, even with including the bad actors. And so I think, you know, I look at that and say, if we're careful in the survey, we can clean up a lot of mess we left in the front door, that led in the front door. But it does like meaningfully increase risk that there will be noise in our data. And so I think we also have to clean up at the front door. And, you know, I've been taking a lot of surveys lately just out of curiosity. I think about those 112 sources. I've been joining some, I've been trying them out. And one of the things that I've noticed is, you know, what's the pithy way to put it? The road to hell is paved with good intentions. You know, as I get past, I had an example a few days ago. I went through 3 platforms to get to my survey. I won't call them out by name, but each one of those platforms had done the right thing, and they put a data quality module at the front. It had an AI prompt at open end, a CAPTCHA, some closed-ended questions, some browser verification. But you know what? To get through all 3, it took me an extra like 10 minutes. And so I think, you know, we've got this challenge of balance of if we're putting so many barriers in front of real people, we're not going to get real people. And so I think and now I'm revisiting my old point, but I think any researcher needs to be thinking of new methods in the survey, even something as simple as like, where did you come from when you started my survey? And then I think we need to be very conscious of the path we create for those respondents so that it's like that real humans can make it through.
Yeah, and that's a great point. We did some research a few years ago, and we ran into the Goldilocks problem of like we threw exactly what you're talking about, a 10-minute data quality module up front, and we found out that the most sophisticated fraud was the only thing that made it through. No real humans made it through. So when you do that, I mean, people that are really into it, like Bob and myself, would likely stick with it, but everyone else is gonna just say it's not worth it. The juice is not worth the squeeze. So yeah, I think that's a great point.
And I think we missed, Crystal, back to Taylor Swift. What era is everybody in? I think that's important.
Honestly, that is too hard. Because then we had a new era come out in the middle of it. Like, come on, my guy. I had to do 10 surveys across 3 years measuring her economic impact. But I will say, Tim and Dan didn't believe me that it was going to be a thing. And then it became this huge thing.
It's the best part of doing research is when you get proved right.
It's my favorite. And I love that because I work at Question Pro, I can like definitively do it. My family hates it, let's be honest. Okay, so you're talking about the Goldilocks method, right? You want to choose, you don't want to be too choosy. It's also like the interview problem, right? The 11th person is always going to be the right person if you've interviewed so many. But if you're letting people in the door and you're working with, let's say, more, I'm not going to say junior insights teams, but I know a lot of people who grew up being like, I'm going to be a market researcher when I grow up. There are amazing programs at the University of Georgia and all those places. How do providers, I don't know, like help partner with their customers to help them build better surveys? And I know that, you're bringing up the max diff question. On my first day at Question Pro, people who have been on these webinars have heard the story before. I was like, oh, well, you have to build a survey on your first day at Question Pro, no matter who you are. And I was like, okay, multiple choice, da 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 da. And somebody said over my shoulder, that's the worst question type. I won't say who, it was Dan. And, but I didn't know anything about a max diff question or using a matrix question, right? I came from a different industry. I had kind of found my way here. And so how do you partner with your customers when you kind of see their surveys maybe not hitting the mark? We'll pull up some of these other ones here in a second. Tim, how do you tell our customers they need to make better surveys?
Well, we just fire them. No, we let them know the implications of the things that they're doing. If each persona who's building a survey, you can go down the rabbit hole, and if you give it to like a PhD researcher, you're going to have a 90-minute long quantitative study. And you're going to hit fatigue, and it's not going to work. You talk to a marketer, they're going to do one question. So you really have to go and back into what are your goals for this?
Mm-hmm.
What would you like to see in your data set? Not necessarily what do you want the outcome to be, and jam insights to hit your 72%, say XYZ, but what is the real response to this? And then educate them on the type of questions to ask. Or I've seen Chris and the managed service team do very few questions that extrapolate and turn into a 20-page report with very rich insights just by asking different question types in the order of the questions. So it really is a education piece of like what do you want to happen at the end of this, and how are you going to use that data?
I think it's an amalgamation, Crystal. Like, part of what's so cool about market research, and I don't know about you, Tim, I don't get like invited to career day at my kid's school all that often. From the outside, people don't know how interesting it is. It's like half marketing. We have to connect with consumers if we want to get real information from them. And it's half math. We have to have methodologies that produce the results we need. And that's the beauty of what we do. And so for me, I think what qualifies someone for a career in research is the intellectual curiosity to want to explore both sides of that. And I think there's a great, I learn from individuals in the space who are earlier in their careers than me all the time. I have huge blind spots about real life consumer behavior and how to design a survey in a way that doesn't sound academic. And I think on the other side, if I were coming into this space, I'd really want to understand these methodologies that may seem old-fashioned, because I think when you understand them, you understand the trade-offs and when they may or may not be appropriate. And I'm not sure there's a right answer for every survey. There's always trade-offs, but that, I think, is the fun part about it. That's what makes it interesting. And so I'm really encouraged that there are, I think, over the years, more and more creative people coming into the space that are making it better.
You might ask Tim and Dan that. They don't always enjoy my shenanigans. But, I think that is true. And, that curiosity really is something that I think we've seen over the years grow, or just the idea that, like, I always tell people, if like you're working in surveys and you aren't doing a fun survey, at least for yourself, like, what are you doing? Right? Like, you have the power to sample anyone. Like, Tim can find, this is when I say, when people, I'm like, oh, these are the people on my team. This is what they do. I'm like, do you want like people of blue hair that live in a specific zip code? Tim will find them. Right? Like, and so it's like, if you're not thinking about like, oh man, I can go find the people to answer this question, I don't know. It seems like you're kind of limiting yourself on your roles and your jobs and your opportunity.
Yeah.
But anyways, now we're back to our like ethos about sampling. So we've got one question. I think this is good. And Bob, I just did a little Google around you on the internet, but I didn't find anything why Tim and you were talking. I was mediumly listening. But Caroline asked a question. Oh, not this one. Christy asked a question. Are there good questions to ask up front? You guys kind of talked about the different levels. Is there a framework that you could find? Is there, I was like looking for the one sheet or something on your website, but I don't see it. So maybe we can make one. We'll beat you to the punch. But what? Okay, there we go. What's a good kind of framework that people can use for reading out those, weeding out people and fakes?
So I can share what I'm doing now personally with research I'm running, and that I think is really interesting. And so one thing that I'm looking at is including a more interesting open end. So I was recently doing a study among parents on food pouches. And, lots of satisficing when you ask very detailed open ends. But in the middle of the survey, we asked, what do you think makes a good parent? And all of a sudden you'd find people who satisficed giving thoughtful, in-depth, emotionally vulnerable answers about how they're raising their children. I think that's interesting, because it kind of, we don't always ask the most interesting questions. And so it gives you something else. Another thing I've been looking at is answer consistency. So some methodologies make that really easy. Back to max diff, you can calculate a root likelihood score. But even if you've got a battery of questions about brand awareness, purchase, for whom, location, you can look at the answer consistency through that battery. But I think things in context work the best. If I'm, in something that's very easy for an LLM to answer, something that's very easy for ChatGPT to answer probably isn't the best weeding out question. And so I think it almost has to become a part of your survey design process.
I love that. What was the answer that got you in your feels the most about being a good parent?
There was one really beautiful one about like letting them live their own lives versus, but actually I'm going to ruin that tender moment by saying there were a surprising number of people who felt like avoiding hitting your kids when you're angry is the only sign of a good parent. So that was the negative side to it.
Oh, there are some dark sides of research. We've seen some strange things come in. That would be that could be a crazy live show. Like bring your most unhinged, open-ended.
That's a great idea.
Like have everybody submit theirs. Like we can vote on it and make it a game show. If you guys have any unhinged, open-ended questions, let me know in the comment, or unless they're sad.
Could I add one thing to that answer, Crystal?
Yes.
I'll stay away from the dark ones. You have to use multiple signals. So there are great fraud detection tools out there. There are great AI tools looking at response patterns in surveys and mouse movements and all of the above. And then there are the things we have to do in context. And what we see is there's a cohort that you catch with fraud tools. There's a cohort you catch by looking at the survey responses. And you kind of have to aggregate those signals to feel really trustworthy in the data. In a recent study, and I know Stephen Snell from RepData, I've seen him present on this as well from their tool set, but we found in a recent study 11% of people were clearly fraudulent from technical indicators, but their survey data looked good. And so you think about that and say, man, if I'm only looking at the survey data, that's a bit of a problem because there's clear patterns here that, we shouldn't trust the data. And so I think my advice would be, and I'm looking at Surech's comment, I think you have to do more than just one thing. You have to bring kind of a broad set of signals into your evaluation process.
Yeah, for sure. Tim, do you have any addition to add on to those broad signals? I know you work on this and you try to teach us about it a lot. We probably don't listen enough.
Yeah, I agree. There should be a blend. And if you're going to ask questions and maybe throw a question in there that is like meant for you to qualitatively evaluate, I think it should be about themselves more broadly. So whatever the question is, you can blend your approach by saying, when they signed up for the panel, this is what they said they were. When they came into your survey, this is what they said they were. If you have the capabilities, when they were pre-screened, what did they say they were? And then use your technology signals to help you navigate through that. So like the parent question, you could get the most robust, great open end, not chat GPT generated, not copy pasted, regular mouse movements, WebGL checks out, Canvas checks out. But you go in there and you find out that they are an 18-year-old who is talking about having a 20-year-old child that's leaving the nest when they signed up for the panel. And, those things, just all three of them help you triangulate who this person is. And if you're using a source that verifies a social media, you can go in there and kind of find out a little bit more about the person and what you would expect them to answer.
Honestly, it sounds more. No, and this is going to sound lame, but more people need to talk about like learning how to do that stuff. All we hear at Question Pro at conferences when I'm out in a boot is like how to tell your data insights. Like if I have to hear another storytelling with data session, I'm gonna be like, oh my God, guys. But like Tim just named like 5 things about triangulation, and I'm like, my God, I don't even know how a market researcher would do that. And I think that is where this like science meets whimsy is so many, there needs to be a blend of that. And maybe I'll start asking you more questions, Tim. Maybe that's on me. But I've been to a lot of these market research conferences, and there is a lot more about like storytelling and selling your insights than there is about like double checking your insights. Christy, she's in here, says it should be done by our team or the survey sample team. Is it whose responsibility does it fall on? Is it Bob and Tim, or is it the buyers?
Oh, you want me to take that one? It's all on Tim. Um, I, so I think about, there's lots of things we buy, and here's a challenge. As an end consumer of Cheerios, my kids were eating Cheerios this morning. I don't visit the factory or inspect that the grain is high quality. But if there's a news story about some problem with Cheerios, I won't buy them. And so I go back to, how do we make this information? If you're a client-side researcher, you have a lot to worry about that isn't, which panel did my sample come from?
Okay.
You have to know your products. You have to know your market. You have to know the internal decision-making process at your company. And so I think we can't expect everybody to have a PhD in data quality. What we're trying to do, Data Quality Co-op, is we're a consortium where all of our clients put quality signals in so that we can make quality transparent across suppliers, and we can add data to that evaluation process. Because my belief is, buyers care deeply.
Mm-hmm.
We need to help them understand in an easier way what quality is and isn't, and who's doing a relatively good job, because that's how we help dollars follow quality. And that's what's going to raise the entire that's what's going to raise the entire vocation. And so I think it's everybody's responsibility. I do think there's a structural challenge, and that is, how do you help buyers see quality further down the supply chain without requiring them to figure out every detail? But
to be Tim. I love that. And, I think that's really where it is, the reason I started hosting webinars and live with Dan and doing projects with Tim and the team was so that I could understand more about market research. Like, it's easy to, marketing software is marketing software, but understanding market research is a much different breed. And so I always, I may come around as a little bit of a head bobby whimsical unicorn, but I really do try to, dive in with the data with the guys and really dig into how we're doing this and what we're doing. And that can be really difficult. How can you put those customers at ease with that education? And Tim, what are some of the pieces we do to help them understand where I know you have tons of slide decks on it. So how do we do it, in a way that makes them feel confident?
Yeah, so we have technology that verifies respondents, that is adjustable in terms of data quality, how strict you want to be on every metric. But we're also monitoring other things that are super in the weeds about specific devices. We are able to append a lot of the technology back into the data set. So if you are looking at someone, as Bob was saying, about hey, great open end, but they had some fraud signals, what's going on with that? And then really being able to work with a research defender or someone like that and say hey, what did you check them for? And what should I be checking them for? Or a question pro, what did you check for? What are you missing? What other data can you give me to better assess this respondent specifically? And then we're able to pipe that in. We also can do it in the background and just kick people out. We can put flags on the data for them to manually review and let them know the findings. So you don't have to dig into the data super strictly on every response. But if there is something with a flag, you can adjust your settings to say, we really don't care if something is duplicate IPs for the specific study. Say it's over time with the same respondent, things like that. You don't want to kick them out because then you'd have a sample size of 0 in the second wave. But we make sure that we give our customers everything they would need to, with the current tools that we have and knowledge that we have and the industry. We're working together with the Data Quality Co-op and other great companies like that to help define what good looks like today and what that's going to look like tomorrow.
I love that. What good looks like today. And, you know, it really does. We talked about AI kind of sneaking things in, but how is AI going to actually enable us for better data, right? What are the tools that are being built that are helping us in the data quality fight? Bob, I'm sure you have some thoughts and research on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, AI is going to be both the problem and solution. And, you know, I think of it in two ways. I think human in the loop AI is really critical. It's kind of the example of chess, you know, algorithms plus people beat algorithms on their own. And then I think what makes AI work well, it's lots of data. And so I think our challenge is, how do we stay at the leading edge of how people are using AI for bad things, and how do we feed our AI detection models to make them better? And I'm really encouraged, actually, with the amount of capital going to kind of startups in the space that are trying to do this in really meaningful ways. I think you go to any industry event and you'll meet 2 or 3 new AI kind of quality management solutions. And I think that's a sign that as a whole, the industry is investing in those AI capabilities. And so I think it's the key. It's the only way to keep up.
I love that. Tim, what are you seeing? How are you seeing AI enable us for good?
Yeah, so I'm seeing that it's educating people a lot faster, but I'm also seeing that it is, whenever it causes a problem, it is the perfect solution to help you fix that problem. So if you see something in your data set, you can deconstruct it and find out, hey, how did this happen? How did this get through? How do we stop it the next time? And just the overall source of the training data that AI is using can deconstruct and give you an actionable feedback to catch what you may have missed. So I was a part of the early release of Gemini through Arthur Sorokin of New Orleans, who works at Google, and he stood up front. Everybody was freaking out about AI, and this wasn't market research specific, but he got up there and he's like, "Hey, I've got bad news and good news. Bad news, AI is going to cause a lot of problems, but good news is AI is going to fix all those problems." So keeping a human in the loop is going to be super important.
Yeah, I love that. Bob, what made you, this is just maybe for my own benefit, if people don't, I'm sorry if you don't care about this question, viewers, what made you start this kind of sample co-op? What did you see in the market that you wanted to kind of like bring the people, empower the people, I guess?
So I spent 15 years on the sample supplier side. I guess, Tim, that's where you were previously as well. And over those years, I was responsible for product and strategy. And one of the things that I always struggled with is, really, there's no good way as a sample supplier to convince any buyer that you're doing all the right things before they're elbows deep in your data after they've already made a purchase. And, you know, after I left, I went to Numerator and had a great experience there. Great team, interesting behavioral data. And, you know, I realized how much the client side is willing to pay for quality when they understand what it is and how much they want quality. And, you know, data quality co-op is something that's been percolating in my mind for a long time. But how do you just help align these signals between the clients and the agencies and the suppliers and the platforms, and just give everybody some baseline shared understanding? Because I think in other industries, it's transformative. Like, think about like double verifying digital advertising, or, you know, credit scores for finance. It's like some baseline understanding of what quality is helps the market operate better. And so we, you know, kind of after working for larger companies for a long time, it's been a big change. Personally, professionally, it's been awesome. But the idea is, can we provide that baseline understanding so that everyone can succeed on quality and everyone can get better? And I think there's a lot of precedent around other industries for making that happen. And that was really the inspiration for it.
I love that. So this was a tee up though to the last question. In all those times before, what is your data disaster story? Right? You had to have seen one for you to go, oh, I need to help people.
I have a really good one. So I don't know.
People need to be named. This is a safe space.
Way back when, I don't know, 2009, 2010, there was a bunch of fraud coming out of Venezuela, and nobody had quite seen it yet. And we had on a big high visibility tracker a whole bunch of fraud originating from Venezuela. And by the way, every data quality check, every machine learning algorithm, every tool, sometimes the bad actors are just smarter than the good actors. And so, we talked to the client, and here's the fun part. Owned up, refilled it, one of those embarrassing moments. And they wanted to have a debrief with their leadership. So we spent a ton of time in the forums figuring out how the fraud was happening. And it was also happening to this client's panel. And there was a lot of chatter online about how their panel was the easiest one to hack. So I prepared these beautiful slides. The first half was our mea culpa, and the second half was here's some information so it doesn't happen to you as well. But they had invited their end client to the call without telling us. So we basically just exposed their own fraud to the end client, and it led to a lot of very hurt feelings. So all that to say, fraud happens. You got to address it head on. And it's nothing to be sneaky about, but we lost the account and never got it back.
And there it is. Tim, can you, before Question Pro, I know I've heard a couple of your stories. What's your biggest data disaster?
Never had one. Never had bad data in my survey. Just kidding. Just kidding. No, we not at Question Pro, but there was a survey that was live, and the way that the survey was constructed, they didn't use any hashing, which is a security type protocol. So it exposed the 3 years of development for a product on the roadmap to all of these people that were interested in a certain piece of media. Like, they knew what was going to happen. They knew what was coming out. They could see everything. And it was because they hacked a survey and were able to see like the source codes and all the landing pages. So it basically scrapped about 4 years of development from the team because they hacked a survey that was not hosted on like a Question Pro or similar product.
Something like with an SSL, like.
Yeah. And it was posted all over the internet. There were so many lawsuits, and it was wild. But it essentially killed it for an amount of time, and then it was brought back. But wow, yeah, it's wild. Just stuff like that you don't think about, like somebody building the survey that has the source URL for what you're testing in the survey, and people can get to it.
Just gotta use that inspect. Just right click inspect, guys. You can. It's fine. It's not even hacking at that point. It's just looking around.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's like what I always tell my mom, or like my mom's friends on Facebook. It's like, you haven't been hacked. Someone just spoofed you. Like, it's not hard to recreate yourself. Like, it's not always hacking. Sometimes you just have to be more curious than people like you to be. Okay, y'all, we are almost at time. Thank you so much for joining us. Bob, any last minute takeaways? Like, what is if you could impart one piece of wisdom to those watching about data quality, the data quality co-op? How do we join it? How do people learn from you? What's the vibes?
Come get a demo. I love to talk quality. It's a passion. So Bob Fossen at dataqualitycoop.com or LinkedIn, reach out. And I just encourage everybody. I feel like we're on the brink of what happened. I started my career with phone centers and remember the digital transformation of research. And we're on the brink of that much plus more change, I think. And so I think everyone just needs to lean in and embrace that. There's no way to stop AI. It's too useful and it's going to transform our industry. And so be curious, because that's how we're going to get ahead in whatever the next phase of our industry is. And it's going to be exciting and fun. And please reach out. Come join us at the co-op, be a part of what we're doing, or just come talk to us. And would love to have that conversation. And thank you for the invite. This has been really fun.
You're welcome. I would not make it anything but fun. On a side note, I did meet someone at this conference I was at this week who's still doing paper surveys. And that, like, I never met one in person. I'd only heard like rumors of it still happening. And so part of me also wonders is like, are paper surveys going to come back as a way to combat AI fraud? Is like, are we going to go full circle analog?
Maybe.
It's like vintage. It's like, it's going to be like cutesy.
Yeah. I mean, I started out with clipboarding and going in person to person interviewing. But what I would say for to help get involved in everything is, obviously talk to Bob, but always have someone like him in your back pocket to give a one over on your data. Like, I probably am going to get a lot of hate for this, but I absolutely love bad quality data. I love fraudulent responses. Please don't cut that, Crystal. But it helps us understand where it's coming from and how to stop it. And we can get it out of your data sets. Pick one person on your team that's going to be responsible for the data and have them come and do a deep dive into the data set and understand what we're doing, and make sure you're not listening just to one person, but multiple people. Tap a Vignesh from Research Defender, anyone really, and get that bad data and find out how they're doing it and how you can personally own it and stop it.
I love that. Y'all are so great. Thanks for joining me today. Make sure you friend both these guys on LinkedIn. And for anyone who had any questions, Marisol, our producer in the back, will be pulling them and we'll be following up with you. Maybe I'll make Tim do it, but it will probably be one of us with a CC. Make sure you follow Bob on LinkedIn and check out the Data Quality Co-op. Thanks so much for joining us, guys, and I will see you later.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.